I did because I was enjoying making and using 3D again. Like I was saying, I've used such a host of different softwares to try and find the one that I love using because a lot of them I found took out the creative side for me. But spending more time trying to unravel why it wouldn't stop showing fireflies or something like that. And it just was frustrating me so much. And then Unreal, I just got in it and I could just do the lighting immediately, start set dressing everything, and it just was fun. It was fun to use 3D again, and yeah, I just took off with it really. I just went at it running and I never looked back. I mean, if somebody said to me you have to use Blender again, I think I'd just be like, I'm done. Like, I'll see you later.
Please welcome Learnsquared instructor Ellie Cooper, who has just released two brand new courses with us in the shape of concept art in Unreal Engine 5 and Unreal Engine 5 Basics, which you can sign up for today. If you sign up for concept art in UE5, you'll actually get the Basics course for free, and you can do so by hitting the links attached. And in this episode, we discover how approachable Unreal Engine 5 is from a concept artist perspective, and how to approach it as a beginner. The importance of experimentation and exploration through personal projects, pushing the boundaries of your skill set and maintaining a healthy mental state, especially as a working professional, plus much more. Let's go. Cool. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Learnsquared podcast, and I'm delighted to welcome on a returning guest, Ellie Cooper. Welcome, Ellie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So, how long has it been since we last spoke? Has it been about a year and a half? Was it last spring or last summer?
Yeah, I think it was about last summer. I mean, I had somebody the other day tell me it was 2 years ago, and I was like,
Nah, that
it was
can't be
not two
right.
years ago. It feels that
Yeah,
way, but it was about a year.
nah,
So
fair enough.
it was last summer, wasn't it? Like June or July.
Actually, I'm getting some memories coming back. I do remember being very hot, very good. My desk is upstairs, and I remember it being like a heat wave then. And yeah, with the computer running, I don't have water cooling, so yes, I remember the sweat now. It was around summertime. So obviously back then you had just released your session with us, which was introducing concept art in Unreal Engine 5, and now we're on the eve of the release of your two fully fledged courses with us. Um, Concept art in Unreal 5 and Unreal Engine 5 Basics. So it's been a busy year for you. And for people that are completely brand new to this and new to maybe just their career in general, aside from you being an awesome Learn Squared instructor, as everyone will know from tomorrow onwards, and I'm sure they've seen already with the little bits and pieces that we've revealed, let everybody know who you are, what you're up to, and a lot of the cool stuff that you do.
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Ellie Cooper, of course, and I'm the creative director and founder of Athena Productions, which is a concept art outsourcing studio. So I've worked for companies such as Sony, Ubisoft, Disney, Paramount Pictures, Apple TV, Microsoft, and many, many more. And I have worked in Unreal Engine for about 5 or 6 years now doing concept art, and that's kind of where I have found my edge really, using that, and that has opened up a lot of different doors to a lot of different clients, such as film clients, TV clients, and video game clients as well. And it's something that has been a lot of fun to do and to kind of experiment with clients and things like kind of push the edge. Been interesting.
Nice. And there's definitely a lot to like cover in there in a good way. But regarding Unreal Engine, I think it's what I've always enjoyed about you is the fact that how you've been maybe committed is the wrong word, but it's definitely appealed to you for a long time, a lot longer, or in a stage where it probably wasn't even considered for concept art. Is that correct? Would you say, or were there did you see some people using it for concept art almost 5 years ago?
Yeah, so I was at university when I started using it actually, because I did university for 3D games
Hmm.
art. So I was using it to kind of create little mini levels, 2D side scrollers, games, things like that, when I didn't quite know I wanted to be a concept artist yet. I love the 2D side, but I didn't know what that job role was called yet. So I kind of did that course to try and introduce myself. And I started to use it then for concept art. and I really loved it, how creative it was. So that was back when it was probably 4.2, yeah, probably 4.2. So quite a while back. So I was using it then back when you had to like bake lights and things like that. It's not like it is now, that's for sure. But it's still incredible and really powerful, but definitely not like with Lumen and Nanite now. And I was using it for ages, and then I got into concept art, and everyone was using Blender and Octane, so I switched over to Octane, and I loved that because that kind of felt like
Yeah.
Unreal Engine as well in a way, because it was kind of real time rendering and was really powerful and quite clever. And then I went into Blender, and I just couldn't get along with it. I just couldn't. And other people are absolutely insane at Blender, and I really want to figure out how they do it so well, but I just couldn't figure it out. But eventually I stopped kind of forcing myself to try and use Blender and just decided to try Unreal again, and I haven't gone back since. I just find it far more creative for me, and easier for
Hmm.
me than I do Blender. And I think that's kind of a personal choice for people, which program they use. Some people love Blender, some people love ZBrush, it depends on the person, I think.
Yeah. But even then, it's like it's still almost, at least, and I say this respectfully, like mind-boggling that how Unreal Engine at that time, like version 4.2 was it? Um,
Yeah,
where
around that.
versus like Blender, but I guess Blender like 5 years ago was still very specific to people that really liked it. This, I think, before is the UI change where it was kind of more like how every other software was. But nevertheless, it just seemed like, yeah, like it just seems like a very peculiar pathway to really perfect concept art. Well, obviously, in hindsight, it's proven the perfect pathway because it seems a lot of things are headed the Unreal Engine way, real time way, whether it is through Unreal or places like Blender almost mimicking things what Unreal can do, like with Eevee and things like that, for example. Um,
Mm.
but also, I commend you, and it's very, and this is something that were mentioned to you only a few days ago when we spoke. That there's certain things that you said in your talk, which we'll get, I'm sure we'll get to, because that's something you did in between the last podcast and this one. You mentioned these little
Mm.
nuggets, and these little nuggets have stuck in my brain. And one of them was how you identify where there's, I guess, maybe a pain point is the wrong word to use, but something where you thought, okay, I'm at a crossroads, perhaps I need to make a choice. You made a choice and you stuck with it and you made it work, and I guess that was one of those. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, and speak for a lot of people, who maybe do stay stuck at the crossroads and never make an adjustment and trying to like, figure out, understand each route by standing there without taking it, if that makes sense, and knowing where you're going to get to. Um,
Yeah.
so did you feel like at any point that was the right decision or the wrong decision, or did you know straight away that Unreal Engine is a thing for me? Or did you have those doubts whilst you were going along that road? If that makes sense.
Yeah, so with Unreal, I just knew, I just loved it immediately, and I just really enjoyed it. Like I did one piece in it, and I was like, yeah, sold.
Okay.
Like even if I have to like work out the kinks, even if it's a bit slow for me right now, I'll figure it out and make it quicker. And I did because I was enjoying making and using 3D again. Like I was saying, I've used such a host of
Mm.
different softwares to try and find the one that I love using because a lot of them I found took out the creative side for me, about spending more time trying to unravel why it wouldn't stop showing fireflies or something
Mm.
like that. And it just was frustrating me so much. And then Unreal, I just got in it and I could just do the lighting immediately, start step dressing everything, and it just was fun. It was fun to use 3D again. And yeah, I just took off with it really. I just went at it running and I never looked back. I mean, if somebody said to me you have to use Blender again, I think I'd just be like, I'm done.
Stay.
Like, I'll see you
Yeah.
later.
But I guess that's also cool as well because, as you've shown with your career, it's given you, I guess, a niche or something that's almost like, was it like, I guess, like a trophy or like a calling card to say that, hey, this is my thing. Like this is a tool that I guess not many people, at least back then, would thought is a tool for this specific field. And I believe last time we spoke, and I know you mentioned it in other things as well, like that also became quite a cool secret weapon for you when dealing with clients, right? Because I guess they didn't
Mm.
expect how useful it was, not just only in terms of the tasks that you were asked to do, but also what they could get beyond that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think some of them were surprised, and also some of them I've had has said to me like, "Oh, finally, like that's really great," and I've mentioned it before to people that I've seen some jobs out there that have said concept artists, Unreal Engine concept artists, um, and that's been really interesting, like being able to tell clients that you can take on their blockouts or you can give them their blockout, like you can take the block out further and then give them back the new level
Hmm.
effectively for them to use. It's also very interesting for film clients because you can actually run them through, the actual level, or perhaps show them how the camera will move and adjust the camera in real time for them. Um, if you've got an animated camera, for example, we've done it before, like at Athena, where we have done an actual running camera for a client where we've shown them how a certain shot in the film might look, and we've helped them edit that and kind of decide. It kind of is like bridging previs and concept art together. And we're trying to bring together the 3D and the 2D that bit closer so that it's not just this huge gap, because 2D and 3D is so disconnected, where it's just like straight cut through the middle, where it's like that's 2D, that's 3D. But concept artists are having to learn new ways to make themselves, different,
Hmm.
and trying to make themselves super useful. And I think we're kind of going towards a more 3D sort of discipline as well. And we're seeing artists that are coming out with like amazing, like for example, hard surface designs that are all in 3D. And why wouldn't you pass that along to a client? They already own it.
Yeah, yeah.
They already own the design, and it just makes them that much happier. Like if you can surprise somebody and make them that much more happier, they're going to come back and use you again. And I think that's super important, trying to delight and surprise your clients as much as you can.
Um, but equally, I guess in certain things, everything has a drawback, and not to get you in maybe any trouble, perhaps. But have you noticed any things where it's maybe not gone to plan, and sometimes maybe not just for client stuff, just even projects in general, where you thought, okay,
Mm.
the Blender route or the normal 2D 3D route would be better. And I say this more so as like the course is definitely targeted towards someone in like myself. I'd say obviously professionals as well, who understand Unreal in real time, but someone who is at that crossroads like you were, and trying to make a choice whether it's like do the real time or do this, and because you sometimes you stick with what you trust as opposed to making that jump and realizing there's maybe more things there. So have you ever like has Unreal Engine failed you at times?
Um, so perhaps some of the times it might not have done what I wanted, as opposed to what Blender has. Is perhaps, like some of the plugins you might get with Blender where it's like, oh, that looks super powerful. I wish I could use that. Um, but then it's a case of trying to find alternatives, like for example scattering foliage. Like I couldn't figure out how to do that in a one click sort of way, and I've now found a plugin called I think it's called like Dash or something like that, that just scatters things all over like your map or all over objects, things like that, in one click, and it just does it. You can paint foliage onto static meshes and things like that in Unreal, but there wasn't a way just to one click it, scatter moss all over a certain clearing that you might have, and this plugin does it. And I think that's just trying to find alternatives. Um, and I think sometimes Unreal might get itself, it's such a powerful program that you can do so much with, that sometimes I think it can overperform
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sometimes, where you're kind of you're kind of finding yourself having to delve into more complex materials that before weren't so complex. And then perhaps things like cube projection that you used to have in Blender, where you could do the
Yep.
maps, but now Unreal Engine's brought in like modeling tools. Their modeling tools, oh, I love them so much. I'm now using them totally like on their own
Yeah.
at the moment. I'm trying to like use them more and more. But anyway, they've now put in cube projection for textures in Unreal, which was a massive sticking point for some artists I know. So I've been trying to experiment with that and see how far that goes. And yeah, it's just trying to find alternatives, because what works in Blender might not work in
Mm-hmm.
Unreal, and what works in Unreal might not work in Blender. And I think it's just getting used to that sort of thing, and seeing the benefits for what they are, and then a few cons where they are.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's one of those things you have to give and take, I think.
Nah, for sure. But also, I take comfort in the fact that, um, respectfully, using you almost as a like a virtual guinea pig, because you definitely have shown that it's not stopped any, like it's generated a business for you, it's generated a living for you. So it's not something that's like just discarded and it's not going to work. Like you made it work, and even with any other tool, nothing is foolproof to the point where it's always going to work. And I guess that's always our jobs as
Mm.
art. It's not just only on the creative side, but fixing those problems, fixing those little things that do go wrong, and finding workarounds. And the fact that it can be done equally in Unreal Engine as well is fascinating. And going on to the courses, why did you make two courses?
So I think it was a case of I recorded too much. I think we've been working on this for the best part of a
Yeah.
year now, better part of a year now. So I think I just kept recording, and eventually it became clear that separating the two out would kind of help people be able to digest it easier. And also, it's really nice to be able to give people the basics who want the basics, who might be 3D artist, film, people who want to do a bit of film, short films, or previs, anything like that, who want to learn Unreal Engine as basically the basics of it without having to do concept art. And that was quite nice. But having the concept art side also caters to the people who want to use
Hmm.
it for concept art and illustration. Like it was a really good way of doing it, I think. Yeah. I'm looking forward to people being able to take it.
Yeah, for sure. I've been taking it in, like in the shadows before the courses come out, just like here and there,
Sneaky.
because like I have played with Unreal a little bit here and there, like on some projects, even commercial ones, and it's been more of just like very heavy-handed as opposed to being in almost complete control as you would like to be as an artist. And a lot of the things what I discovered is, like you mentioned with a lot of softwares, is there's always that kind of, they all have their own language. Like ZBrush is very famous for being very specific in the way it wants to work. A lot of other Blender was, I think, at a certain point, kind of still is, but it's made itself more familiar with like people who come from 3ds Max or Maya, which is where I was. And I think Unreal Engine was a little bit similar. I saw like the real time stuff, which I thought was cool. I've always liked the fact that it's very aligned with my workflow because I tend to end up in a lot of 3D, and to the point where it can actually be, as opposed to being just painted over and it's done, it can be almost be ready to be shipped almost in 3D as well. So putting something in real time kind of makes sense. But I've always been like a bit
Mm.
arm's length with Unreal because, as with Blender or other 3D software, I kind of know what I can get away with and what things I can break. And in Unreal, it was always a case of, okay, what does this do? I know this is supposed to fix that thing, but I kind of don't know how to figure it out. And then when I watched the Unreal Basics course, you do explain it very well in terms of what each thing does. And
Mm.
I never really understood how to be super artistic with it until I saw the Unreal Basics course and I found out which specific thing I need. And
Oh, that's
I've
great.
just been messing with that and breaking it to the limits as much as I can just to figure it out. And even then,
Yeah.
all the other things about camera, I've been kind of like just using my limited knowledge of what I know in other softwares and kind of like just shoehorning it in. And then watching your chapter on
Mm.
that, oh, that's how you're supposed to use it, and that's a better way to exploit it as well. So it's gonna be my go-to little handbook of. It's gonna be on my Google Translate for Unreal Engine, and that's just only the Unreal Basics course. So I'm sure it's gonna be super super useful to a lot of others as well. Um,
That's really, really good to hear. Yeah, I mean, Unreal Engine is so when you first open up, it looks
yes.
terrifying. I think a lot of people are really intimidated by it because, like I was saying, it's so massively powerful and it's been aimed at game
Hmm.
developers, but actually Unreal has been like really pushing for it to be used by ArcViz, vehicles, even concept artists. They really push the concept art side of it now, because they want to see people using it in that way, and it is capable. And I hope that kind of the basics course makes people feel less intimidated by it, and that you can use 10% of the program to get a really amazing concept art image
Hmm.
out of it, but you also have 90% more to push yourself even further. Like, for example, I started out in it doing concept art, and now I'm going into making short films with it. And that's just how far you can push it. Like, it gives you those options to kind of, grow even more, and I think that's the really cool part as well.
Yes. And more so just for playing with it myself, but also um following the courses that you've done, is realizing how flexible it is and almost in a good way how it disrupts the traditional concept art workflow. Whereas, like, I remember one chapter, you just you're not even finished the scene yet in terms of blocking it out and figuring it out, but you go back, I want to change the temperature because I don't like the color, and you can do that. Normally, you do that at the end when you've rendered it, and then see if it works or not. You can test that out and troubleshoot it whilst it's still in blockout phase, and
Yeah.
that just seems like perfect for the concept art pipeline because there's all these little tweaks, and I'm sure there's always not just I'm sure there's always changes from clients and what they want to tweak, what they want to change as well. And being able to do it in such a non-expensive way in terms of time, that is, no pun intended, a game changer. From using it in
Yeah.
this way, is that something that you knew early on, or is that something that you kind of discovered the more you went into it?
So like with being able to like sculpt the landscape and paint in foliage and use the post-process volume to change like the temperature, the color grading, things like that really early on, it just feels so much more
Mm-hmm.
artistic. You don't have to render out, take it into Photoshop. You can kind of really tweak it as you go along and you can really sculpt your image like in Unreal and you can get Unreal like super close to the end, like 90% like finished before you take it into Photoshop, which, like you were saying, like sometimes with some clients, you're able to just show them the block out because they can kind of envision it or they've given you the block out or whatever, which, is super nice as well with certain things. But yeah, I found it definitely very artistic in that
Yeah.
way.
Um, and in terms of like what I also found fascinating as well is, and it's not a surprise, in hindsight now, but it's the way you, I believe, pretty much or exclusively stay in Unreal throughout the whole course, with the exception of maybe bringing in some assets, which is again,
Mm.
I guess more what I'm getting at is like you don't build nothing really outside of Unreal; it's all done inside. And when I again saw the course, I was like, okay, I'm sure that landscape is brought in elsewhere, but there you are sculpting it away, very artistically and perfectly in terms of like technically you don't need any more than that unless you really want to push it further. Um,
Mm.
which I also found was like, oh wow, that's brilliant. Because it's definitely a good sell for that particular tool that you can just do everything in one place. And I think that's something that artists have always wanted to do. Like they just want to be able to focus
Mm.
on getting that imagination out and not having to waste time back and forth, and crashes and back and forth, and it not being compatible.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. With like the landscape tool, you're able to just totally sculpt it in Unreal with like alpha brushes, which is really cool. Or you can kind of bring in outside meshes if you want to. Like I sometimes
Mm-hmm.
use meshes from Gaia, which is like a landscape sculpting tool, for like mountains and things like that, just because I find it easier than, having to sculpt massive mountains and this, that, and the other. So sometimes I do that, and you can kind of mix and match, which is the really fun part. And like I was saying earlier, there is also the modeling tools in Unreal. The jury's still out for me about whether it's going to completely replace the program, other external programs for me. I don't think it will replace Blender in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
sculpting, but hard surface things it is able to do. Like very recently I had to model a house for a project with it and I had to model that totally in Unreal and I did. And that was like a real challenge, but it was a lot of fun to be able to do. I had to do a lot of arrays and things like that for the house and do booleans and all these different bits and pieces. And I'm currently like working on a personal project where I'm trying to do that sci-fi base, but do it totally in Unreal, like just model it entirely in Unreal and see how far I can get it and try and be truthful about how far I get it in Unreal as well, so that people can kind of see how well it
Yeah.
models. But like that was a really interesting addition from them as well, like going forward with your thought that you're kind of not having to move outside of the program. I think they're trying to get it to
Yeah.
that point where they're trying to make it so that you don't have to leave it, because why would they want you to
Yeah.
leave it?
Yeah.
So I think they're trying to do that, but it's really cool. There are some very cool features in it.
And you kind of answered my next question a little bit there as well. Like, I was just gonna ask, how experimental do you get, especially like trying to push the limits and discover new things? And obviously, you explained it there with your little secret side project that's happening. But also, I know you kind of dive deep into it. I think purely in Unreal with the fellowship that you did. Would you like to speak more about that?
Yeah, so the fellowship is a really cool initiative by Unreal Engine. It's a totally free 4-week learning. It's like intense learning from like 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. where they
Wow.
just teach you all day, every day on how to use Unreal. And like they teach you from like like kind of intermediate level all the way to like advanced, and they really push you. And that was really good because I challenged myself to do um a room that had a load of like, the whole story behind it was that there was a collector who had a collection of really amazing art and fossils and all these very expensive things, but he earns his money through doing heists. So it had to have the perfect mixture between like this kind of wealthy look with collector's items, such as like a T-Rex skeleton in there, and then like heist material and things like that in there, like um all sorts of things in there. And I wanted to challenge myself to do totally 3D, no 2D whatsoever, render it out using path tracing, and then render it out using Lumen, see how I could get Lumen to look like path tracing and really push it in that side. And that was so informative. That was so fun to do. Um, it was tough. It was a real it was a tough month, but it was so much fun. I'd do it in a
Hmm.
heartbeat again. They do loads of different ones. So I did the world building one, but they do animation, storytelling. I'll probably try and get into the storytelling one at one point, which is like doing animation and like doing a short film. I want to try and get into that at some
Hmm.
point. But yeah, they run them every, like, I think twice a year, and they let in about 100
Wow.
people out of like 20,000 applicants or something, I think they said last time.
Wow.
Like, it's really good, but they were super insistent on trying to get concept artists into there. They say they want production designers, concept artists, you name it, and you have to kind of apply. But it was so worth the time, like the things that I learned from there, and also the confidence I got from it that I could do, 100% in 3D was like really, really good.
Wow. And that's interesting because there's something that you've been working in for so many years. And even then, it was like you could find new things to do. Do you see that slowing down at any point with Unreal Engine? I know you've been doing it for 5 years, but from my understanding, it's very different sometimes. Not extremely so, but between each update almost. That each update feels like a new era in terms of what's available, and sometimes maybe older stuff doesn't work on the newer stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong in that. But obviously now we're on five. Like how do you think that this, obviously, I'm sure resources permitting from Epic, but do you think this will continue to expand and has unlimited possibilities in terms of where it can go?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, when 5 came out, that was a game
Mhm.
changer. And throughout these last few updates, they've introduced like MetaHuman Animator, like the fact that you can scan your own face and use it for MetaHumans, like the link that like you can, it's insane how clever it is. Like you can just get it to match your face and you go away with it. It's really insane. Um, and they keep adding these amazing features, but they keep the base level of what you get the same. The foliage painter, the landscape, where things are found, they're not going to change that
Mhm.
massively from what you kind of will learn in the course, for example. They're just adding
Yes.
more into it that improves it even more, which is really exciting. I definitely want to use some of the scanning side of it soon
Yes.
to try and scan in faces and animate humans and things like that.
And I guess for people on the fence, that almost sums up Blender in a certain way. Like it's always adding things. I think adding like, that's a great way to put it, right? It's definitely maybe shifting certain things around and maybe improving obsolete things, but it's definitely just constantly adding loads and loads of stuff. Um, so you mentioned there about the scanning. Like, what kind of things do you find yourself exploring more or more intrigued by? Obviously, concept art is the core of what you do, but as you've explained,
Mm.
Unreal Engine can do so many things. We've had many friends on the podcast who've made films out of it and cinematics and all sorts as well. Um, what is exciting you, or what's really kind of like attracting you to dive into a new realm, in so to speak?
So I think that's just being an artist in general, right? Is that you're constantly wanting to be creative and artistic and explore how much further you can go. And that's kind of the joy of having personal projects, that you can do whatever you want. You don't have to do kind of projects that somebody set out for you. And that's something that I want to do, kind of getting more into that short film side. So I want to be able to start scanning things in, start animating, start telling very short stories, and start exploring kind of how I can make these cinematic looking short films. I don't know where that will take me. I don't think I really mind where it
Yeah,
take me.
sick.
I'm sure it'll all be good, but it's just one of those things where it's like artistically you want to do it, and I think if you are feeling that way, there's nothing, why not?
Yeah.
You know, why not give it a go? All you need really, from what I've seen and read, is an iPhone. I mean, I wish I had Samsung because I could do it straight away, but I need to get myself an iPhone.
um, I think that's well put, and it's like that's a great way to sum up artistry as well. Like you always embark on something, you never know where it's gonna go. You have hopes of where it's gonna go, and I believe almost never does it end up how you wanted it to, unless you are probably non-human, perhaps. But it's like I guess that's the fun of it, and if that's what can happen in Unreal as well, that's fascinating. And I've seen you do that in the course with the scene that you make. Like, there's a little moment where you're working on the village or the town inside the castle bit, and you're like, I like that how this is going to be up here now. It adds a bit more story to where this could be and a bit more dimension to that. And it's almost like on the fly, you are ideating a story visually and almost physically, you could say, because you're moving objects around. And I guess with, I guess depends on how thorough anyone makes a scene, but I think the way you do it as well in the course, that's something that you could easily maybe go back to in the future, um, where you can probably turn that into something that could be part of a film, right? Like, I guess there's only maybe a few things you need to really tweak to make it maybe a bit more suitable for maybe an animation or a film, but it's pretty much there. If I'm, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Like, you know, we put in the at the end of the concept art for UE5 course, we put a camera in there to render out still, but we also moved the camera forwards to kind of demonstrate to you how we could animate it. All it needs really is perhaps some people moving in the valley, the horses riding up and moving, and perhaps some birds flying around, and flags snapping in the wind. You could really start to push it. And I think that's the fun thing, where you finish off your concept and then you go, hold on, how far could
Mm-hmm.
I push this? Could I keep going? Instead of you just finishing the image and being like, well, that's done. Like, oh well, just chucking it away. Like, I can keep going. I think some people, they like to just do the concept art, which is totally cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's really awesome. But I think some people love to push it that much further, or have the opportunity to. Um, but I've found that animating in Unreal is really intuitive, um, and makes sense in my head. You know, it all just seems like it's very much like the UI and everything like that has been very much designed to be very
Yeah.
friendly, and that's part of the joy of using it. And like with my process during the whole course, I think I show that I'm very flexible with changing things. Like,
Yes.
even though I say to people like, this is what I'm doing, and like I'm headed in this direction, I don't try to pin myself down too much, because that's where I feel like I get blocks, like art blocks, where I stifle myself too much. And I'm pretty flexible all the way to the beginning. I don't have it all figured out. Like, I don't have the absolute image in
Mm-hmm.
my head how it's going to turn out at the end. Like, how you say, you wouldn't be human if you knew what the outcome was going to
Yes.
be. So I think that's important, that people understand that it's not 100% figured out at the beginning. By no means. It's probably like
Mm-hmm.
40% where I know actually where I'm headed, but I don't know where I'm going to end up.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
it's just part of the joy.
And that's definitely like your creative philosophy. But would you say that Unreal definitely enables you more so to stay like that? Because let's say something is maybe perhaps more rigid of a workflow, you kind of have to, you're beholden to that, like what its limitations are. But if something can allow you to change almost on the fly, I guess like almost like non-destructive, where you can kind of go back and quickly change something and it doesn't really fall everything apart. It's almost like, I guess you're playing Jenga, but you can take all the bottom pieces out and then kind of put them back and nothing falls apart. Would you say that Unreal really helps you in that regard?
Yeah, definitely. Like, for example, like the landscape, if you absolutely hate what you've done, after a few hours, you can just erase it, like reset a part of your landscape. You don't have to reset the whole thing or delete it. You can reset a very small snippet of it, and then just start to paint again and sculpt it again. And then you're
Yeah.
done. Like, you don't have to delete the whole thing. You don't have to hop into a new program and try and like muscle it into being the landscape you want it to be. You can just model it, erase it, flatten it, do whatever you want, and you can kind of reset that way. And that's really that's really nice to be able to do. Same with like the foliage, you can just erase part of it. And like when you have like, let's say you have 100 models in there that you've put for foliage, like grass, trees, rocks, you can just erase the rocks and not the trees or the grass or vice
Hmm.
versa. Like you can be really selective and really careful. And that's really nice as well that you can kind of do that. You don't have to destroy your whole
Yeah.
scene. You can kind of select which parts and be more artistic in that way. Or you can move like certain foliage you've painted in. You don't have to move all the foliage. You can just select one mesh that you might have painted out of millions
Hmm.
and move that, and that's nice as well.
Yeah, the foliage paint is one of the coolest things ever. I definitely get lost in that in a good way. Like just of how easy it is to just. I think there's something fun about just painting almost like physically live grass that blows in the wind whilst you're painting
Mm,
it. So you can kind of
crazy,
see
isn't
like
it?
how it actually performs, and maybe like something psychological
Mm,
because everyone knows how grass is supposed to behave. So you kind of know that okay, artistically this is grass and it's looking the way it needs to look, and you can do little things there. But I think just like it's quite cool just painting something and grass just kind of just explodes out of it, and it's not a bunch of
yeah,
things you have to tweak and simulate and all that kind of stuff as well. Um,
yeah. But I
yeah,
mean, it's crazy that you can paint foliage in like trees and grass, and it's like moving, like
yes,
in the wind, and it's not like you don't have loads of fireflies or lagging or rendering times. Like it's actually animated in the scene,
yes,
and it's absolutely crazy that that's just it's able to do
yeah,
that. Like, and you can still work in your scene. I think that's just completely awesome.
yeah. I mean, I guess like when you think about it, I mean, obviously it is a game engine, and when we play a game, we don't think twice. The fact that everything is living and breathing, you're just running around the scene. Obviously, there's always glitches and things crash, as games famously do, but it kind of works. And when you think about it, it's logical that that should happen in a creative capacity as well. Um, like I find that with VR sometimes when I use that, just how intuitive it is. Although it's very clunky and unnatural with this thing on your head, but the fact that you can just just paint freely, not in the normal arm in a particular position kind of way, and you can make all these things is
Mm.
very freeing, and I find that with real time as well. It's just interesting how it hasn't happened earlier because we've had game engines around for a very long time. I do remember games where you can like make it on maps or whatever. Never did that too much, but yeah, it's just almost a shame that it never happened earlier. But I guess it's not a shame now because we have awesome courses that are gonna teach us it as well. Um, Back to the foliage painter. So obviously that's obviously great for environments, but can it do any particular kind of environment? Obviously, I know you do it in a professional capacity. Are there certain environments where it does struggle, or can it literally do any type of thing?
It can do any type of thing. So I've painted out cities with it, characters with it, signs with it, anything with it. You could just use it to put flyers all over the floor,
Sick.
for example, like paper all over the floor. It's called foliage painter, but probably it should be just called scatter painter or
Okay.
something because people don't use it for foliage
Yeah.
only. So you can put any static mesh in there and paint it out. Obviously, if you have like a mesh that's like 20 million tries or something each time and you're painting it, 100 in one spot, you might find yourself getting into a bit of trouble quite quickly if you're not careful, depending on your
Yeah.
PC. But it can paint absolutely anything. It's really it's they've been good to not lock down that
Hmm.
to just foliage, I think.
And in terms of spec, hardware spec, I know you covered this in the live stream that we did recently with you. And whoever wants to double check that or revisit that, there's links available on our channel where you can check that as well. And you mentioned the hardware specs there. Well, again, for people who are maybe still considering, like, okay, do I want to use Unreal because I've got the perfect setup for Blender, whatever it might be? What kind of setup can you get away with? And obviously, I'm asking this as I know you've someone who's evolved with Unreal Engine throughout the year, so I'm assuming that you've changed your spec quite a fair bit as well. So you kind of know what we can really get away with, and what kind of you need.
Mm.
So yeah, for people who are completely perhaps on the fence or just want to know more about that, what kind of equipment do you need?
Yeah, it's a question I get all the time, and it's a difficult one really. It depends what you're wanting to
Hmm.
do as well. So I started using it when I had a 10 series, and I think I did use UE5 at that point. So I did have like a 10 series, and then I upgraded to a 20 series, and then a
Yeah.
30 series, and now I'm on a 4090, I think it is. So I've kind of upgraded as I've gone along, as I've, depending on what I've wanted to do, I've said previously that I wanted to start doing short stories and short films, so I've kind of upgraded as high as I can possibly
Hmm.
get for now with my PC at a 4090. But yeah, it depends on what you want to use. I mean, I've seen some people use Unreal with a laptop, and it's run really well, but there is a limit to how much your laptop or even your PC can handle. Like
Right.
my work PC at 4090, it can't handle everything, and that's universal throughout whatever
Hmm.
3D package you use. So, there is a certain point where, that's why we have rendering farms, right? Because
Yes.
they not all
Yeah.
PCs can handle it, what you're wanting to do. So I think it depends on what you're wanting to do, but I think anything between a 20 series to a 40
Hmm.
series is really good. Um, and of course, it always depends as well on like your C drive, on how much you can store on your PC as well. Because of course, if you have a massive file and you don't have any room on your drive, that's going to be a struggle for any program. So you have to keep aware of those sort of things. But in terms of graphics cards, I've said to people before, you know, you can upgrade as you go along,
Mm.
see kind of why it's happening the way, if you're getting issues, why it's happening the way it's happening, and, you know, do you need to upgrade to like the best graphics card there is, or is there something else that you can do, or something like that? So between a 20 series and a 40 series, I mean, the newer the graphics card you can get, of
Hmm.
course, it's better because they have better tech um, and better things in there. So yeah, it depends really, because you can't tell everyone to buy a
Sure.
40
Yeah.
series because they are
Yeah.
expensive and they are rare
Yeah.
still, aren't they? I haven't looked for a long time, but yeah, getting them for a while was just painful.
I mean, I've got one myself. I know we spoke about this before. I've got a 1090, 1080 currently as well. I am looking to upgrade, but at the same time, I got to make do with what I have, and it is working fine, like smoothly for me. But one thing, and I guess like we're speaking about this before as well offline, just like kind of thinking like, do I have the right things, or thinking, do I need to have a certain specific setup just to even be able to get the most out of it? And obviously, based on what you just said, it gives me comfort knowing that I can get away with still what I want to get away with what I have. But obviously, upgrading when you can is important. I guess anything professionally, because
Mm.
you use it on a professional level. So I guess there's certain things that you need to be able to do, and waiting for things or having limitations can actually be bad for business. But aside from
Mm.
graphics cards and obviously storage, which I think is an important one as well, because I'm assuming, and I've had experience with rendering out certain animations, is file sizes can be crazy big sometimes. So at least having storage for that, and obviously the C drive is important. But anything else like RAM or anything, or is literally just storage and um, GPU?
So obviously trying to get, as good a RAM as you can get and processor that you can get, it all adds up
Hmm.
to a better, stronger PC, across the board. But I found like the biggest thing for me is the graphics card,
Okay.
you know, and also, things like the what's the word for it? Let me check. Um, like the dedicated GPU is really
Right.
important as well. So for example, you need at least 10 gigabyte of of dedicated GPU memory, sorry, to really get the most out of Unreal. Um, you know, you can get higher than that and you'll find yourself just having an even more powerful
Yeah.
PC that you can start pushing towards, like having absolute huge scenes that are completely ridiculous and crazy, like 100 million
Yes.
tries, sort of crazy, so um that's also an important one with the graphics card, because I've had some graphics cards where they have abysmal dedicated GPU
Right.
memory, and like even using Blender they'd crash
Wow.
because it just get gobbled up really
Yeah.
quickly. So that also does depend.
Cool.
But yeah, there's just so many factors with all sorts of programs really. But yeah, that's my
That
recommendation is your
that's
GPU.
very insightful. I as you nailed it before, like it's based on obviously what you want to do and what your needs are, and you kind of know, I guess, in advance when you're trying to really push something to its limit, you maybe are hitting the limits of that you need to kind of improve, or you can scale back, and that's a decision anyone needs to make. But like you said, that goes with anything. Um, but you mentioned that like on crazy scenes, and to me, with how much detail is in the the scene that you make in the course, like with all the villages, the foliage, animals, plus the castle and everything else as well. that, if I stand me corrected, isn't a crazy scene based on what you're referring to when you say crazy scene, right? Yeah.
No, no. So I've done crazy scenes before where, like there's a city that goes all the way back and there's like it's all nanite.
Mm-hmm.
There's like millions and millions of polys all on the floor of all broken up bricks and rocks and all this, that, and the other, and absolutely pushed to its like absolute limit. Um, and that's kind of what doing personal projects is for as
Yeah.
well. I try and push it to the absolute limit and kind of see where that threshold is. And then I think to myself, like, right, okay, next time I do something like this, what can I do to make sure I don't reach that threshold? Well, could I use 2K maps, like 2K textures into the distance? And anything that, as it gets closer to the focal point, gets up to 8K, anything in the foreground is 8K. What can I do to make this easier? Could I take this model out and push it down try wise? What can I do to make it more optimized? And I think trying to like figure those out also will help as well for anyone that might have like a GPU that isn't quite the latest
Mm.
fad out there or whatever, it might be a clever way to get around it because sometimes I found the thing that gets eaten up most is using like massive 8K
Yeah.
textures because they take up a lot of space real quick. Like just two
Yeah.
textures is crazy.
Now, I think that's a good point as well. Like, and that's one thing I enjoy about just being a creative in general. Like, when you do hit those literal limits, you have to start optimizing, and that is a nice creative task in itself. And you do find nice hacks, and maybe you create something that's better artistically when you know that you have to make a choice versus like being able to. Like, you can have every Lego piece in the world. Maybe what makes something exciting when you know you got like a certain amount of corner pieces and not, then you kind of have to like be kind of be very strict. Like I guess to use a Star Wars example, one thing I really like, although I do enjoy when they get more extravagant and more CGI and more visual effects. I do like the older ones because they're so limited, literally puppets on strings.
Mm,
And even though um the trench run at the end, like it feels dynamic, but when you think about it, it's actually just a small pan or a small move and it cuts and that's it. When it's all in the edit, and that's where the magic comes from. And even though Unreal is obviously unreal, like literally, the fact that you do have to scale it back, I'm excited by that because it shows that okay, that's where you are really tested as a creative because that's when you really have to make a decision and then you grow from there as well. Um,
mhm.
in terms of like your scene that you've made, what I like about the course as well is on top of the technical side and how to use Unreal Engine and all the things and all the tools, the philosophical side and the theory side that you cover as well. And I do like the bit about how you explain why you make this some of your favorite kind of things, like whether it's medieval scene or I like your little take about British summers. I've never thought about it in that particular way, but I realize that I do. Obviously, we're both from here. Enjoy a British summer, and there is some things
Yeah.
particularly unique about fields and certain landscapes that we have that just look great and feel great. I'd like to talk more about that. Like where do you get your inspiration from and how do you kind of inspire yourself? Because yes, there's inspiration everywhere, but sometimes a bit like with the limitations talking about, you kind of have to make a choice. So how do you go about that approach?
Mm. Yeah, so I have a few different ways, and one thing I really like to do is I like to write down my ideas on a Word document that I might keep on Google, or you can even keep a notebook or things like that, where I might read something like a certain scene in a book, and I'll write down what happened, and then I'll write down like how I see it in my head, and then I can come back to that whenever I want to, and watching certain films, like you might see something and think, oh, that's really cool. What happens this if I do it this way, or like with my fellowship thing, what happens if I take a collector but make him earn his money from heists? How does that look? And like that totally turns something on its head, combining two things that, say you want to make a brutalist Japanese temple, how do those two connect and
Mm-hmm.
how can you make that super unique? And that's something that I try to do, try and find that, uniqueness in it. And sometimes doing personal stuff, I don't want to do something that is totally unique. I want to do just a
Yeah,
castle
yeah,
in the
yeah.
distance and just enjoy the process and enjoy colors and light and just enjoy it for what it is and not push myself to think like, you know, everyone's seen 1,000 castles before, it's just going to be the same. And it's like, no, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be me, and
Yes.
that makes a difference. I think people have to be kind of to themselves with personal work. It's a good way to not get burned
Mm-hmm.
out is to let yourself do what you want with personal work. And you don't always have to share things
Mm-hmm.
like personal work. You can just experiment and enjoy it. Just enjoy it for being an artist,
Yeah.
really. We all got into it for one reason. We all love art. So, you know, you don't have to share with the world everything you do or feel pressured to or feel pressured that every single thing must be a masterpiece. A lot of my stuff is far from it.
Mm-hmm.
The graveyard of my work is probably bigger than what I put out. So, um,
I
you
like
know,
that graveyard.
that's the
Yeah.
reality of it as well.
But I guess we've all like, everybody's art journey is built upon a graveyard of all of the fail stuff. I was going through my hard drive the other day and I just saw a folder, very old one, and I didn't realize how many dead PDFs are in there. I was scared to open some of them, well, because I remember like that wasn't a good era, but they're still there, and they helped, I guess, build the pavements or the little bricks to where they are now. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's really cool to embrace that. Is that something that you've always, or is that like a kind of attitude you always had, or have you ever been in a place where maybe it was maybe more negative and unhealthy way with your relationship with your art and trying to, I guess, prove yourself? That's always something that we can, and can speak about this offline as well. Like, you can tell someone you don't need to worry, but that still doesn't not make them worry. And I guess it's part of being an artist. But yeah, I'd love to know more about your journey with that. And has it always? When did you kind of get that connection with? I guess what you're trying to explain was more like being okay with either letting things go, but that need to be let go, or not being too precious with them, or just also understanding that
Mm.
things have a time and a place, and it's okay to let them breathe. But yeah, I'd like to know like how you got to that point.
Yeah, so it hasn't been easy. I've had moments where like with software, not I don't know what software to use, and then I felt like I was falling behind
Mm,
everyone, and then I'd see another artist and I'd be really like downcast about the fact that they're doing like insane work and what's wrong with me, why can't I do something like that? I've got all the same techniques. I see what they're doing, but why can't I do the same thing? Like what is wrong with me? And I'd suffer from it a lot. And I found that as soon as I stopped kind of thinking about everyone else. I know that's like really easy for me to be able to say that, and it's not that easy with social media. Like you
mm-hmm,
see somebody post something and it just comes flooding back. But as soon as I thought to myself, like, it doesn't matter what I use, as long as I enjoy using
mm,
it, I started to find my own stride, and I started to, get known for using Unreal Engine, like without even trying, because I was just enjoying it and I didn't care what other people really thought. I just was enjoying the process again and saying, like, well, this is how I do my work. I get the job done. What does it
mm-hmm,
matter? How I get there. And that really helped. But, even today, I still suffer sometimes from imposter syndrome and, having moments where I might feel burned out or I've worked really hard for months and I'm knackered, and I haven't listened to myself. And all these things, they still happen even when you're maybe counted as a senior or creative director or anything like that, or even if you're a junior, like these things will still
mm-hmm,
happen and you get stressed out. But I think people try not to talk about it too much. They don't really want to talk about it, and that's
mm-hmm.
understandable. Um, but it's not an easy journey getting through that stage of being an artist where you're just comparing yourself to others, and I think it just takes time, really. It I know that's probably not what everyone wants to hear. You always want to hear like a way for it just to be solved, but you know, it took a long time, I think, for me to be able to tell myself, like, stop looking at other people's work. It's not helping. It's definitely not
Mm-hmm.
helping yourself, just be comparing yourself and being mean to yourself. So why bother? It's just making it worse. It's taking longer. Just stop.
Yeah.
And once I got myself to stop, it kind of started going to go right
Mm.
because I kind of got into my lane of what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And did you find that there was a specific thing that made you, I guess, take that step or evolve in a particular way, or was it just almost, as you explained, like you got known for Unreal Engine without even making an effort to be known for Unreal Engine? Was it a similar kind of thing with this? Like, did you kind of just, was it more a case of like, okay, I'm focusing on what I want to enjoy and focus on that, and then all of a sudden, those feelings and those thoughts kind of dissipated or became more tamer? Was it like that for you?
So they just stopped happening, really. like for a long time I left like Discord groups where I just felt like everyone was doing like daily art.
Yeah.
And I felt really pressured and worried by that because everyone was making such insane art and they were so talented and I just couldn't keep up. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do like one piece a day. I just couldn't do it. And like as soon as I kind of said to myself, like, right, that's not helping necessarily. That's just making me feel more worried and like just let myself just in my own pace do my own thing and just enjoy art and, you know, use Unreal. It's really difficult to explain as it just kind of started to
Hmm.
happen where I started to enjoy using Unreal and just enjoying art in general. And I stopped thinking about where everyone else was or what everyone else
Yeah.
was maybe doing or what I was doing wrong. And I just started to enjoy it. And then it just started to get easier because I think I was just a lot kinder on myself and I just did it for the love of what I wanted to
Mm.
do. And if I threw away an image, I didn't feel so bad anymore. Um, and eventually I just started to get more people noticing what I was doing. It was really organic. It wasn't
Mm.
that I was putting my stuff out there because I was like, everyone needs to see what I'm doing. Everyone needs to notice. It just, and it wasn't super, and that's still like it is now, like where I might put a piece up and I have to leave it. I can't look at it or how many people are liking it or if it's on trending, I can't look at
Hmm.
that because it just puts this crazy pressure on yourself where it's like if it's not on the trending page it mustn't be very
Yeah.
good and this that and
Yeah.
the other and it's like that's not true you know just leave that side of it alone
That
it doesn't matter.
very, very wise. And I think it's important to acknowledge as well, like we just said there about it being organic. Like it's, I think maybe just being aware of it and understanding that either something needs to change or you're just not happy with a particular thing. And then just still being aware of it, you almost automatically make those kind of adjustments. It's like if you're underwater and you hold your breath for too long, even if you know breathing underwater is not right, your body will be like, you got to breathe, bro. So you start, choking. But then prior to that, you know that, okay, I got to swim to the surface, kind of speed. Maybe that's a really bad example, or maybe a brutal example. But like I guess when you do get that kind of maybe I guess suffocating is maybe, yeah, that's like a one way to explain it. Like you do have to take a breath sometimes because that's what suffocating means. Like you're not being able to breathe, which is to function. Um, so
But you
yeah,
hear of like amazing like artists who are at the very top of their game, like for example like Ross Straws. He like disappeared from social
yeah.
media for like nearly a year because like he just was struggling with it. And I think and he was very honest with that and I really respect him for that because it's not always, you might see that they're doing amazing and you think like god they're so incredible but everyone still has the same issue. Everyone still gets stressed, still gets burned out, still has anxiety or feels really down or anything like this, that and the other. We're all in the same
Mhm.
boat. Some of us are just better at masking it than others.
Mm. Yeah, no, for sure. I think for my own journey, just it wasn't even being more so about honest with it. It was just understanding what it actually was, understanding that, oh, it's anxiety related or it's imposter syndrome, which I know is not like a medically recognized condition, but what we're trying to say is like just that feeling of being inferior, not good enough, and then all the things that it expands into. But then once I became aware of it and realized, oh, there's something in there, or then you kind of unpack it and thinking, well, what is causing that? And then basically, like how you explained, then you realize, oh, specifically this or specifically that. And sometimes happen by accident where you stop doing something, then you realize, oh, that was once that thing stopped, that made me feel better, or it gave me better energy to do things. And then it's kind of like figuring out in that particular way as well. But then equally, I
Mm.
know a lot of friends, unfortunately, who not creatives as well, but they are having similar struggles, but they're not facing it or they're not acknowledging it for whatever reason. And I guess it's like you said, every person's got a different journey, every person's got a different case as to why. But I think one of the things, as you mentioned as well, like you just have to take that moment to reflect, whether it's forced upon you because of a burnout or whatever, or just by genuinely doing that. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, no, I think it's like for anyone who is struggling with it, and if they were like myself, who was a case of they didn't realize they were struggling until it was pointed out to them, perhaps by others, or just realizing that they didn't take a break. Maybe take that time to reflect and just think, what would it be like if I do take a break, or if you're not feeling comfortable with your art, which I guess you never will, because the whole point of art, in my opinion, is to constantly improve and to reach a better level. which means that you'll never be happy. Almost like if you look back, you might be happy with how you've improved. Maybe that's where the happiness comes from. But also, there's joy in creating in itself as well. But at the same time, it's not. I
Mm,
don't know if you agree, but it's not something that you can always be happy. Like you can't be a happy artist, can you? Like in terms of just in terms of the art, like to achieve artistry itself.
yeah.
That makes sense. Maybe that's a really
I mean,
negative way to phrase it.
I think you can try. I mean, there's something that I've started to introduce like at like Athena for certain projects and for my own projects as well. It's called post-mortems for like for projects and personal work where I say what went right and what didn't go the way I quite
Mm-hmm.
wanted, not what went wrong or what looked terrible or anything like that. I go, well, what could be improved next time? And I go through it that way where I try and keep very upbeat about it, where I say, I love the colors, I love the lighting, but this could be improved, and perhaps I could do this better, and maybe I could try this technique
Yes.
next time. Like, don't just say to yourself, like, I hate how this looks, and don't give yourself a solution. Like, you need to say to yourself, like, well, I don't like the way the trees look in this. Could I maybe render them out at this level, or perhaps I could do this or that or the other, try and give yourself solutions because it's a really quick way to drive yourself into the ground, being really negative
Mm-hmm.
with yourself about it. Like it's definitely something that you have to train yourself with. It's not an instant like turnaround. You have to be quite conscious of it and try and pick yourself up as
Mm-hmm.
soon like if you have that negative thought where you're like this is crap, I hate what I'm doing, like this is awful, you got to stop yourself and go hold on, but what's going right, and like try and kind of overwrite that part of yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
It's tough,
That it is.
but
Yeah.
you can do it.
Yeah, same. Like there's certain projects where even like almost 70% of the way through, I'm like, this is gonna be shit. Like this is gonna be garbage. But then you kind of like just make it work, you figure it out, and then you put an end to it,
Mm,
and then you just think of it for the next time, whether it's gonna be for the same thing again or the next time you do something similar. Like, okay, not make that same step again, which is part of being a human since we were born. We're always falling
mm,
to walk, and it's kind of like the same all the way through until we stop. Um, but yeah, to not get so morbid. In terms of like, I guess how do you help yourself or to people who are maybe thinking, okay, so how do I kind of help myself? What kind of things do you do to keep yourself centered? To when things are you are feeling burnout or you know that okay things are getting a bit much. How do you bring it down?
mm. So one of the things is stepping away. I think I say that a lot in the
Yes.
course.
Yep.
I think it's like my every other word. Like step away from your screen, take 5 or 10 minutes, go play a game, go watch a movie, go make a cup of tea, whatever, and just come back at the screen and look at it like an art director. Look at it dispassionately. Look at it, you know, what went right and what's going wrong sort of thing, or how can I improve it, and trying to, because sometimes like I've had it where I've just sat at a PC for like 10 hours trying to fix an image and it's like I don't know how to fix it, what am I doing, and I've just gone to bed, woken up the next morning and I'm like I know how to fix
Yep.
this.
Yep.
And sometimes it's been a case of like deleting 90% of it and restarting, and like I used to say to people that if I restart an image, the next image is going to be absolute blow away because like I know where I'm going. I can
Yeah.
skip all the hard parts where I'm figuring it out, because that was my way of dealing with restarting and trying to make a good thing out of it. Like that's just what I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
do. But yeah, stepping away is super important. And also like with burnout and things like that, it's important to have things outside of art. Some people I think really they find that doing art is their how they unwind, and that's totally fine. That's really I'm very jealous. That's but like some people they like to step away, watch movies, read, game, go do yoga, go running, do anything, go for a walk, just go see friends. Like whatever keeps you healthy because you're going to be in this industry for a long time and you don't want your body to give out, because we are using like, you know, parts of ourselves where if they break down, we're in big trouble in terms of what we can do. So you have to protect those things, and that's not overworking yourself or anything like that. So you do have to be conscious of that and kind of force yourself into
Mm-hmm.
having breaks and rests and
Mm.
things.
What kind of things do you like doing? I know you mentioned books. I'd love to talk a bit more about that. But yeah, like, I'd love to know the kind of things that really help you reset, help you heal, and just things that you enjoy doing. Because even if it's not artistic or like on a particular art project, I'm sure as you'll agree as well, like it just fuels you in it fuels your artistic, that corner in your brain that's artistic. It just fills that tank up even more. So yeah, let us know what those things are.
Yeah, so it's something that I'm always trying to add more into as well, and not let myself get too like sucked into work or anything like that. So I read quite a lot. I really enjoy my reading side. So I collect quite a lot of like sprayed edges books. They're my absolute like I'm really into collecting those. So I love reading and I love collecting those, but also I love to do like yoga. I love to get outside, like gardening.
Nice.
I'm very lucky to have my own horse as well, so I see him quite a lot. My horse Starsky, he's very lovely. So I like to go and see him quite a lot and do those sort of things to try and reset myself because often I found things where I don't think are the best resets, where I'm present in the moment, and I do like I was saying, like yoga side, I also try to go to the gym at least once a
Mm-hmm.
week. I want to do more, but it's so hard to find the time, and
Mm.
that's something that I'm trying to work on and figure out a way that I can just be more like, try and find time for that sort of thing. So there's so many different things, it can even just be like taking your dog for a walk or like sitting with your cat or anything else, it can just be so many things. Anything where I think your mind isn't just running away with you, I think is a really good de-stressor.
Very well put. What's it like having a horse? Forgive the naive question. I've never had a pet. I don't think I will have a pet. But normally, when I think of a pet, it's normally things that are smaller than you. Yet something that's like completely
Yeah.
bigger. So I'm sure like it's fascinating. Horses are cool. I love Lord of the Rings. A lot of horses in Lord of the Rings and a lot of other things as well. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, like what is it about having a horse that is? Because it sounds like it's definitely something that's connected with you a lot, and that's something that you really like enjoy doing. You can tell by the way you're speaking about
Mm.
it. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I've been riding since I was about 2 or 3 years
Oh,
old.
cool.
I just was thrown on a horse when I was really little, and I've never stopped. And yeah, it's just been something that I've absolutely loved. Like, I think it's the fact that horses are just like all animals, they just don't judge you like you have a bad day.
Right,
They
right.
don't care. And, and they're also just so, they're gentle giants, really. Um, you know, my other half, Adam, he's like, will not come near my horse. He won't get on a
Okay.
horse. He's
Yeah.
like, I don't want anything to do with your horse. Like, you have him separate. Like, like I'm all for you going riding, but don't drag me into
Yeah.
it. And like, I think some people are really scared of horses, and they can be quite scary. They're very powerful animals, but they all have their own personalities, and yeah, they're just I don't know what it is really. They're just amazing animals, and I've always loved riding horses and being around them,
Mm.
and they're what I know. And every time I ride a horse, my brain just goes quiet, and
Ah,
I think that's part of the joy as well.
sick. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like that connection with this other being, right? And horses are
Mm.
they're definitely cool. Like I guess visually speaking, like they're very very cool. But yeah, like I'm definitely with Adam on that one. I don't know if you remember Casualty. Remember there been an episode or something like that where this person got his chest broken because the horse kicked him. So I've always kind of been like, okay, yeah, I don't want that to happen to me, so I tend to stay away as well. But that's
Yeah,
super awesome.
yeah, I've had some falls as
Oh,
well
yeah,
that haven't been
I was just
so
gonna
so
ask, like, you
good.
must have like accidents and stuff. Like, is it just like falling and stuff, or have there been some very scary ones?
Yeah, so one of my horses, it once reared and flipped back over top of me and flattened me. And like those old like rubber balls you used to be able to get, they
Yes.
used to throw down, they used to go
Yeah.
flat and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
pop back up. I just did that. They took me to like hospital, like I had to be airlifted.
What?
And like, yeah, because they were really worried that like, because those sort of things when they happen to horses, like it can cause like crazy stuff to happen.
Right.
Like you can be so injured.
Oh my
And I
God.
just got away with bruising. I was so lucky. I was so lucky.
Wow.
But yeah, I just bounced straight up, and I've had concussions before where a horse has like smacked me bang in the head, and like I've had all sorts, but touch wood, like I think I've been very fortunate, you know, that with like injuries that I've had horse related. So yeah,
No,
it's
fair enough.
not for the faint of heart.
That's fair enough. I mean, like to be anything. Like just speaking about art, like I can say I don't want a horse or anything, but the amount of injuries I've had just from doing art, like I think I need to be airlifted too sometimes. Like with some of the art injuries. Um,
Yeah, like
yeah.
I've had like my elbow's gone funny with like drawing and things like that, and I've had to go to chiros when they tell me like you've got tennis elbow,
Yeah,
and it's like, what do you mean tennis
yeah,
elbow? Like, how, why do I have tennis
yeah.
elbow? And it's just where I've drawn on my tablet where it's been like straight up,
Yeah, yeah,
and I've like put pressure on my, like where my wrist bends backwards, like I've put pressure
yeah.
down that muscle. So now I've learned that I have to put my tablet like flat to try and not gain injury. And yeah, like, yeah, I think I've had more injuries with
Yeah,
drawing,
no, it's
like bad back,
yeah,
bad neck.
it's a silent. I wouldn't call it a killer, but I think it can get extreme depending on like, the mental side for sure. But like, it's definitely physically, like it's silently dangerous physically. If that makes sense. It's because, and I was speaking to somebody concept 101, and we were just talking about like drawing posture and how we
Mm,
all described our postures. It was like it looks like torture, and I remember seeing a picture of myself at my desk once, and I didn't realize how far my back is hunched. Like I didn't realize it was like that. I always
mm.
thought like I got perfect posture and it's straight, and I'm like I look like Gollum basically, like with my spine. It's really
Yeah,
scary when you think about it.
it is.
Does yoga help you with that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and also chiropractor, like being able to go to the chiropractor every few
Okay.
months definitely helps because I get so tight through my neck and my shoulders where
Yeah.
I've got one arm forwards and then one on the keyboard where it's like closer to me. And I pull everything through that, it gets really
Mhm.
tight. And having like a chiro reset me every like few months or every month or whatever can really help with that.
Nah, fair enough. Yeah, definitely. That's one thing. Obviously, you mentioned a lot about the art journey, especially for beginners. But one of them is look after your physical health. Even if you think you're fine,
Mm,
just keep an eye on those kind of things because they only start hurting when they get really bad. But the damage is already happening
mm.
prior to that as well. Again, in silence. Um, Ellie, before we wrap up, what does the immediate future hold for you? Obviously, you got a company you're running, working on amazing projects. You got two awesome courses coming out. We've had your session come out last year as well. So you're sharing a lot of knowledge to others. What's next in store for you?
Ooh, I'm not a break. Hopefully, the Christmas break is going to be really nice to do. But yeah, in terms of like work and everything, is just kind of pushing the future of like how I can use Unreal Engine for short films and pushing Athena to like that next level and more projects and more really cool things that hopefully we can share in the future. And yeah, just enjoying kind of using Unreal, and seeing how far I can push that side of it. And like I was saying, I'd love to take another fellowship, probably end of 2024. Um, that'd be great. And of course, getting married in 2024.
Congratulations
So
again. Yeah, awesome.
thank you. So like got that to focus on as well. So that's going to be a whole new thing in itself. So yeah, there's quite a lot coming up. I mean, I'm really hoping I can get back to doing personal work because I just haven't been able to. I've been so
Mhm.
busy with things that I'm really hoping I can do personal work and see what I can do, really.
Awesome. And obviously, like we said, this is as we're recording, this will be coming out after the courses have released. So everybody hit the links, sign up. There will basically, if you're listening to this when the episode airs, the course is actually on sale. It's on a early Black Friday sale, so you can get a discount nice and early. But to those who are taking the course whilst listening to this episode or are considering it, any words to your new students?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what everyone creates. I'm gonna be asking you all how you did certain things, or that looks super cool, or all these different things. It's just gonna be so awesome to see what everyone creates and see how much everyone enjoys Unreal Engine as well. It'll be really cool to have more of us in the industry that know Unreal Engine and are pushing that envelope that much further.
Awesome. Eddie, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for jumping on.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks so much.
A huge thanks to Ellie for an incredible episode. Learn from her today by hitting the links attached to this episode. And remember, if you do sign up for Concept Art and UE5, you'll get Unreal Engine 5 Basics for free, or you can purchase them separately. I've been your host, Arindanda. Till next time.